Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with Chase Thornton. You can download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app or check out our video content when you go to the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. It's a big newsworthy week, as it always is this time of year in the NFL and from a fantasy football standpoint. But the biggest news of the week is I got hacked on X. That's the biggest news of the week. Hacked, locked out of my account, complete works. I'm starting from scratch. And if you see here on YouTube, and if you're listening on the podcast, I'll tell you my new username for now. I'm going to try to change it, but X apparently wants you to pay through the gazoo to be able to get a decent username nowadays. But at dmater91935. Yes, I'm going to try to get it changed. But for now, if you enjoy our content here on Operation Domination, if you enjoy the little notes that I like to post, try to post every day, every other day, especially with the draft coming up, you have to follow me there now. If you see Dan Mater FF on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, block it, delete it, get rid of it. It is not me. I do not have a Mercedes or whatever crypto thing that thing was posted in the other day. So
you're not one of the crypto monkey guys now or whatever, the NFT guys.
That is not me. The worst of it all is I kind of figured out that it's an epidemic right now what's going on with X and the hackers, because it wasn't just me. There's a lot of people within the fantasy football industry. Nate Markham from Fantasy and Frames comes to mind. Jeremy Popelards, who's been on this show multiple times throughout the year, he also got hacked and had to start from scratch. So there was quite a number of people within the fantasy football industry. So if you see those guys, give them a shout, give them a follow, get it back going. Trust me, it's worth it. There's a reason why we had big followings to begin with, and it's really annoying to have to build back up. But enough about me. Let's get into the fantasy football impact that is the NFL free agency, shall we? And look, we hadn't had a chance because we were talking about, winners and losers last week in the scouting combine. Make sure you go back and watch and listen to Operation Domination if you missed that episode. But we didn't have a chance to talk about some of the trades that happened before we even got to the tampering period. So I want to lead off the show with that because the trades were just as fantasy impactful as a lot of the signings that we've seen to this point so far. So let's dive into the first one, shall we? That at least I have on the list anyway. And that's DJ Moore getting traded from the Bears to the Bills. Now, it was no kept secret that DJ Moore was likely going to get traded from the Bears. Luther Burden was emerging. Rome Odunze had a much stronger year too. And it just didn't make sense for DJ Moore to get paid what he's getting paid to be the third receiver on the Chicago Bears. It made all the sense in the world for them to move on. So they did. Gets traded to the Bills. Chase, I don't know about you. There's very few places I can think of that would be a better fit for DJ Moore from a fantasy football standpoint than the Buffalo Bills. What did you make of this?
No, I mean, he's probably, you could argue, it depends on what your opinion is of DJ Moore and Stephon Diggs, but you could argue he's the second best wide receiver, and that's if you think Diggs is good, that Allen's had to throw to. But I'm a little underwhelmed by the move just because I've been a little underwhelmed by DJ Moore in the last couple of years. But they did go out, they did get a weapon, an actual guy that can be and has been a weapon before. He's got experience with Brady. He's been in Joe Brady, offenses before and done well in them actually. So I thought it was a good move for them. A second round pick seems a little bit steep, but what were they going to get with a second round pick for Josh Allen anyway? They haven't shown a propensity to be able to actually draft anybody to help him out out wide anyway. So, I like that. I think, DJ Moore could, he hasn't missed a game in 5 years. So, he's going to be on the field for him. He can stretch the field for them. I think he aligns on the outside with them. I think he can pair well with Shakir and with Kincaid there and actually be a weapon. So it was a good landing spot for him to get him out of Chicago, get him out of the way of Rome Odunze and Luther Burden, and Colson Loveland and everybody else that we like there in that offense. But I think it also, like you said, is a good fit for him as a player and will help Josh Allen. It can only do good things for Josh Allen from a passing game standpoint, who has actually gone away from his wide receivers more as the years have gone on. Maybe he'll get back to throwing out wide.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about DJ Moore. And you mentioned the relationship he had with Joe Brady. 2020, 2021. He went over 1,100 yards both years. Had 118 targets in 2020, 163 targets in 2021. So Joe Brady is already used to calling an offense with the idea that DJ Moore is the alpha wide receiver, which is going to happen with the Bills, by the way. Like, Shakir's a nice player. He's a slot player. It's going to be DJ Moore who they're going to probably alphatize more so. Now, this is an offense that's not going to twist it. It's probably not going to change too much. That does like to evenly distribute to an annoying degree amongst its weapons. But to be fair, some of that sometimes has to do with Joe Brady, but some of it sometimes has to do with the fact that they don't really have an alpha dog either. And DJ Moore can be a lead wide receiver. He's proven that in the past and with Joe Brady. Last year, he had 80 targets, 682 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Again, we talked about it. They had Colson Loveland, they had Luther Burton, they had Rome Odunze, they had a budding offense. Now he goes to Shakir, Dalton Kincaid when he's healthy, Keon Coleman, who maybe in the doghouse, maybe gets a second life. We don't really know which is which. He's in a perfect situation to just be the guy. DJ Moore, wide receiver too.
Does this move preclude them from taking a wide receiver? Because before this move, in mock drafts, they were kind of half and half split between helping out the defense, which needs it, and honestly, wide receivers. I've seen Brazel going there. I've seen Cooper going there. I've seen Concepcion going there. Does this preclude that? Or do you think maybe that's still in play at 26 there in the first round?
I think it's still in play. I think what it does, it doesn't make them desperate to have to take a wide receiver. This is a win now team. And that's why I was okay with the move here, because you had to get some sort of weapon for Josh Allen, because you are win now mode. You fired Sean McDermott and promoted from within the offensive coordinator. So you're basically saying the reason we have not gotten over the hump is because of our head coach and Sean McDermott, which means you are all in the win now to prove that that's actually the case, because otherwise you're going to look like a bozo. So we'll see exactly what happens there. So no, I don't think it precludes them. I think it makes them not desperate for one. If they were to have a better player who can maybe make a bigger impact, to your point, on the defensive side of the ball, which they are going to need some help on. I do have DJ Moore projected for about 95 to 110 targets. The other thing I would go on to say is that I don't think he's ever had a quarterback like Josh Allen.
Right.
Like, I mean, Caleb Williams definitely improved in his second year, but it was a bad first year. And again, he was in a crowded room the second year. He's had Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and the albatross that was the Carolina quarterbacks for years and years. I mean, the best fantasy season we saw is with Justin Fields. Yeah. And the only difference really with Justin Fields and any of those other quarterbacks is besides targeting the crap out of DJ Moore, it was that you could hit him on a long ball. You can hit him down the field a little bit. I just talked about DJ Moore can play the outside. He's not going to get in Shakir's way. Josh Allen has also been desperately needing to get back to throwing the deep ball himself, because he hasn't been able to do that because they haven't had the weapons the past couple of years. So I think it's a good fit for them both with some upside mixed in as well. I want to flip the conversation to the Bears side of this thing, though. DJ Moore gone. Rome Odunze, another year. Caleb Williams, another year. Luther Burton, another year. Colson Loveland, another year. I mean, this is a very, very young and very, very exciting offense. And they could add another weapon. They absolutely could. I don't think it's going to be a top-notch priority, but they could do it in the first round because they are going to be in the back end of it. So I'll be interested to see what they do. But for now, I don't think they're going to sign anybody. You know, we're into free agency. They didn't really go after anybody there. Whatever rookie comes in, I think would have to pay his dues, so to speak, because he's already competing with a bunch of young players. So you look at Rome Odunze, you look at Luther Burton, you look at Colson Loveland, you have 80 targets that got vacated. What do you think, Chase?
No, I like the move for Chicago, like you said, because it frees things up for Odunze and Burton, who are two young guys that are going to grow with Caleb Williams and be excited in that offense. I feel like they still have to make some kind of move there. They brought in Khalif Raymond from Detroit, but is he really going to be their third receiver?
He was for Detroit.
Yeah.
love Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is still on the roster.
How did that work out for him though with Khalif Raymond? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big Khalif Raymond fan. I just don't see any excitement there. And I think if one of your top two guys goes down, you don't want to be relying on Khalif Raymond. Chicago they have legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. And I don't know that you count on Khalif Raymond as your third wide receiver there.
They do, but a lot of the resources has to be paid attention to. Offensive line, which some of it already has because they had the unexpected retirement of Drew Dahlman, and defense. The defense needs a lot of things. So I don't know if that's going to get prioritized in any kind of capacity. I think that's why they make a signing like Khalif Raymond, who already knows the system and played with Ben Johnson. I think it's why you make a move like that.
That's true too.
With the hopes of, Dunsley and Burden just stay healthy. We'll see. But you still have Colston Loveland. So it's not like they don't have a third weapon in the passing arsenal. That's, right. Yeah. So that makes a big difference too. Point is that it does create more targets for Dunze, for Luther, Burden, for Colston Loveland, everybody who we've been excited even more so far. Let's move on. Let's talk about David Montgomery. He gets traded to the Houston Texans. And a lot of people got a lot excited for a lot of different reasons. I want to focus on the Texans side first with David Montgomery. So just to recap, last year, he had 158 carries, 716 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, 26 targets. Woody Marks had 196 carries and 36 targets. You mix these two in, Woody Marks was just underwhelming. He wasn't bad. And from a fantasy standpoint, he was a top 24 running back because of just, pure volume. But what Woody Marks is really good at is being a reliable receiving option out of the backfield. Not necessarily super overly explosive, but a guy you can trust coming out of the backfield who can run between the tackles when you need him to, but ultimately you want him as that passing target. And that's where I think David Montgomery comes in. It gives him a guy with a little more authority, a little more thump running between the tackles, especially in the red zone. So this part surprised me. David Montgomery and Woody Marks had basically the same amount of red zone carries. David Montgomery had 34, Woody Marks had 33. Montgomery had 6 touchdowns compared to Marks' 2 touchdowns in that territory. That's going to be the big thing. So if you're going to ask me, okay, is David Montgomery really fantasy relevant on the Houston Texans? The answer is yes, because as long as he's healthy, he's going to get the goal line work. He's not going to be sharing with Jahmyr Gibbs. It's not going to be Woody Marks. It's going to be David Montgomery. They get inside the 10, the 5-yard line. It's going to be David Montgomery time. And we know that's the area in which he can excel. Is it always going to be pretty? Is he going to be touchdown dependent? Probably. But he is going to be fantasy relevant from that standpoint because this is an offense that should score at least an average amount of the time. On the flip side, I think it's okay for Woody Marks. Like, okay, maybe he doesn't have top 24 upside because he's not getting all the volume. But I do think in PPR leagues, we're going to be talking about a guy who's hovering around the top 36 area because he'll get enough receptions. Now, I will say with the Houston Texans, this is a team that does not throw the running back very often. Their team targets from positional standpoint, wide receiver 63.2%, tight end 22.9%, running back a measly 13.9%. Now, maybe that changes if Woody Marks can actually be the receiving back, or maybe this is just going to be the philosophy because they spent a lot at the wide receiver position and resources over the past couple of years. We'll have to see how that plays out. But I think Montgomery is somebody who's going to be on our radar next year. What do you got on this?
No, I like the move too for Montgomery. I mean, last year was his fewest carries he's had in his career. But we know that when he gets consistent carries and if he gets those touches, he can produce just fine with the volume. And then, like you said, I think he's the first and second down back here in Houston. I think that he is the goal line back, the short yardage guy. The nice thing about what they have now with Montgomery and Marks is Marks spent the full year being more or less the full year, being their guy, being their running back. You don't, and it's not like Montgomery can't play in the passing game. They just didn't use him in the passing game as much because they had Jahmyr flipping Gibbs, who's all universe at everything he touches. So I like what they're doing down there in Houston. I think both of these guys have fantasy juice for the year. I'm going to be prioritizing Montgomery probably a little bit more because of the goal line work. And because, like you said, if Marks is the receiving back, which I think he will be, I think he'll be the primary third down guy or, long yardage guy. If that's the case, then, and they don't throw to their running backs as much as and as often as Detroit did, Well, that does depress his value a little bit. If he's not going to be in the red zone and effective in the red zone rushing the ball, and if he's not getting quite as many targets as other receiving running backs do, I may push Woody Marks down a little bit. But this was definitely a move that, honestly, in my eyes, elevated David Montgomery. From a fantasy standpoint, he spent last year hovering around low end running back 2, running back 3 type numbers. And it was a drop back. It was a step back from where we've seen him before, but I think he gets more than 158 carries this year. I think he, continues to get you 4+ yards a carry. I think he sees closer to 200 carries like we saw, the previous several years for him, or actually most of his career. And yeah, I think you get your 13 some points a game from David Montgomery, and he keeps himself right there in mid running back 2, maybe even better upside range.
Yeah, I mean, the range I have for him early here is somewhere between 190 and 220 carries. So I would agree with you in that. All right, so let's talk about the flip side of that, the Detroit Lions, and this is where a lot of fantasy people are getting super excited. We finally have the day where Jahmyr Gibbs breaks free of David Montgomery. Now, look, let's make it real clear. He had 1,800 yards. He had 18 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs has already become elite running back in every facet of it, even with David Montgomery on the field. The Lions went on and signed Isaiah Pacheco.
Yep.
Don't care. That's a downgrade from David Montgomery. So that doesn't bother me in the least. So what I'm paying attention to, and this kind of goes back to the Woody Marks and David Montgomery conversation, Pacheco's never been that great in the red zone and finishing himself. And now you have 34 red zone carries that have just been vacated. I'm going to go on a limb and say the majority of that goes to Jahmyr Gibbs, who already had 18 touchdowns last season. And what blows my mind is that with running backs, touchdowns for any position is volatile from year to year. But running backs in particular usually score dependent on how good the offense is at moving the ball and scoring, right? And it makes sense. So you had a year in which the Detroit Lions had to fire their offensive coordinator because of how much they were not happy with the way the offense was functioning. And yet we're still a top 10 scoring offense, and Jahmyr Gibbs still got 18 touchdowns. Meaning, even with bringing in Drew Petzing, who I'm not a fan of, it doesn't really matter. This offense is just too loaded at the end of the day. So Jahmyr Gibbs, we were talking about Bijan Robinson a little bit because Tyler Allgeier moved on too, and he's on our list. But Bijan won, Jahmyr Gibbs won, whichever way you want to go. I don't think it matters. It lights up, tails up.
Yeah, I mean, Pacheco will ostensibly be taking the David Montgomery role, but I don't think he's going to fill it as much or as well, like you just said. So I would not be drafting Isaiah Pacheco like he was the starter in Kansas City. I would not be drafting Isaiah Pacheco like he's David Montgomery of the last several years. The thing that worries me more about Detroit's offense than Isaiah Pacheco and Jahmyr Gibbs in particular, the thing that worries me more for Jahmyr Gibbs than Isaiah Pacheco is that offensive line there in Detroit, which is kind of falling apart right in front of our eyes. They've got Penei Sewell and a bunch of used car salesmen there, and they've been hit hard by guys retiring, leaving, and that kind of thing. So that's the only thing that would make me pause right now looking at Jahmyr Gibbs. He's still a top 2 or 3 type guy in the league and on draft day for you. If you want that kind of versatility, he can score from 25 yards out. He can score from 3 yards out. He can do what he needs to do. So I'm more worried about that offensive line than I am Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, Pacheco will be a distant running back 3-4 type for me, if that.
The great thing about fast running backs is they don't need as good of an offensive line. And as long as the Lions have Penei Sewell, they'll at least be
his own magic. Yep.
There'll always be an average offensive line. So that's kind of what it breaks down to. Michael Pittman gets traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we went from the Steelers never making trades till 2 years in a row they're making trades for wide receivers of all the positions, because this was always the team that drafted wide receivers, right? But then now all of a sudden they're making trades for wide receivers. Interesting to me. I thought this was a fantastic fit. Now, we have the issue of not knowing exactly who the quarterback's going to be. Like, we don't know for sure that it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. And if it's not Aaron Rodgers, we really don't know exactly who else it's going to be. I mean, there's still some guys like Cousins floating out there and stuff like that, but it's getting slim pickings pretty fast if it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers.
I can't believe you don't have any faith in Will Howard.
Yeah, let's steer away from that conversation.
Yeah.
Holy hell. Because I've heard some people who are like bring him up like this is supposed to be like a legitimate thing. I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. Anyway, different conversation for a different day. I do think Michael Pittman is a fantastic fit with DK Metcalf. Because think about it. Arthur Smith is gone. All those stupid routes they were trying to use DK Metcalf for, which he doesn't run well. I don't know what the scouting report was for them when they traded for him in the first place. But when you're asking him to do hitches and all these little drag routes and everything over the middle and get these like physical, nasty route running situations, that's not what DK Metcalf does. He's a fly-by wide receiver.
Get him vertical. Yep.
He's a slant and go wide receiver. Michael Pittman does all those dirty routes. Michael Pittman does all the dirty work in the middle. He'll gladly live like a hybrid tight end. That's what Michael Pittman does. So when you match those two up, it's a great situation for whoever the quarterback may be. Like I said, the only scary part is we don't know exactly who the quarterback is going to be. And while I am not a huge Mike McCarthy play caller fan, he typically finds a way to get two receivers to eat for fantasy football purposes if he has the quarterback to do so. So this is a fantastic situation. So just to give you some background and jog your guys' memory, Pittman had 110 targets last year, 784 yards, and 7 touchdowns. DK Metcalf had 99 targets a season ago. So we match these guys up. We're not really eating into each other again because they're playing different roles. Last year, even though it's irrelevant, the Steelers' team target split was wide receivers 47%, tight ends about 29%, running backs 23%. I can tell you right now, with Arthur Smith gone, the tight end target share is going to drop and probably get funneled right into the wide receiver pool. So that's going to help out these guys be able to both eat. Again, it's just about the quarterback, but what's your take here, Chase?
Well, my take is they're kind of only one slot receiver away from having a nice offense to look. I mean, obviously they need a quarterback, but in terms of
no faith in Calvin.
Yeah, I mean, no, Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. I'm not, those guys can go take a flying leap. It's been long enough. The nice thing about, like you said, the route running that Pittman does compared to the routes that DK Metcalf is best at. If Brian Angelico can even sniff, and he and Mike McCarthy, obviously it's Mike McCarthy, going to be Mike McCarthy's offense, but Angelico's the offensive coordinator. If the two of those guys can figure out how to actually use DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman the right way, which I'm sure Arthur Smith never would have done, they complement each other perfectly. That's beautiful. And the nice thing for Pittman, if the quarterback does end up being Aaron Rodgers, remember Aaron Rodgers kind of turned into Captain Checkdown last year. He was he threw the ball short all over the place last year. He was not going down the field, wasn't pushing the ball down the field a ton. They should have been with DK, and he should push the ball downfield to DK when he's open. But if Pittman now is running all of those short routes, I like the possibility for Pittman to get a ton of targets in this offense and to be kind of that safety valve, comfort food for Aaron Rodgers and I kind of honestly expect him to be if he's their Pittsburgh quarterback.
Well, and let's say it another way. Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth. That's a hell of a lot of tall bodies headed into the red zone.
Yes.
Now, not that Michael Pittman's been ever, fantastic as a red zone threat, but that's a hell of a lot of tall bodies in the red zone, which Aaron Rodgers does excel at throwing the jump ball.
On top of now still having Jalen Warren, but now having Rico Dowdle in the backfield in terms of guys attacking the Reds. Yeah, they've got a lot there for a guy if they just figure out who's going to take snaps.
Sure. On the flip side, that means Michael Pittman's no longer on the Colts. So we had the Colts fall out of things. They paid Alec Pierce, I wouldn't say superstar money, but star money, more than I thought he was going to get. Now, I like Alec Pierce. He's a really fun wide receiver. I think it was really nice to see last year how efficient he was. And we should probably just we were going to talk about Alec Pierce later, but we'll probably just talk about him now. This guy had 60 catches for over 1,000 yards. That's how crazy efficient he was. And that was with Daniel Jones and Riley Leonard and Phillip Rivers. He was with a plethora of quarterbacks, none of whom have a great deep ball. The best one is Daniel Jones, but none of them have a great deep ball. So it was fun to watch him in that realm. because of the contract he gets paid, I have to believe it's because the Colts think he's going to be more than just a big play wide receiver. You're paying him like he's going to be a feature asset on your team and have we'll just say a wider range of route tree where he's going to be involved.
Yeah, he's not just running goes and yeah.
Right. I would have to believe that. So you get Michael Pittman, who goes away. He has 110 targets that gets vacated there for opportunities between Josh Downs and Alec Pierce. Now, they're in a situation where we don't know for sure who the quarterback week 1 is going to be. We know it's going to be Daniel Jones. He got paid 2 years, $88 million, $44 million a year. There's been a lot of talk since he signed that contract that there's confidence he'll be there for week 1. It was still pretty later on in the season with him dealing with an Achilles injury. So I'd be still a little bit questioning that. Even if he does play week 1, I have a hard time believing a guy like Daniel Jones, who's only had good spurts in his career, is going to respond all that great to an Achilles injury. So I'm putting in a question mark on the whole quarterback situation of it all. Basically, what I'm saying is this. I think Alec Pierce in redraft leagues is going to get overvalued. I think because of this contract, because Michael Pittman leaves, I believe people are going to probably rank him high in wide receiver 3, low in wide receiver 2, when in reality, on a week-to-week basis, he's probably going to be more like a wide receiver 3 in consistency, probably better as a best ball type player. But there's a lot of things about the Colts I'm not loving. I'm not loving the offensive line. I'm not loving the fact that they're not going to be able to be in a position to make too many other moves. I'm not loving the fact that they think Daniel Jones is really the answer coming off an Achilles injury. Where are you at?
I look at this team and I've got to think that there's at least one more wide receiver move coming though. They have to bring somebody else in. They don't have a Z on this team. I mean, to me, Pierce is their X. Downs is a slot guy. And then it's Ashton Doolin, Anthony Gould, like that. Who? There's nobody
before. They have done that before.
Yeah. And where the flip has it gotten them, really? I mean, they have Tyler Warren now, which is a nice third weapon to have. And he's for all intents and purposes, the 3 weapons in the pass game are going to be Tyler Warren, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce. I agree with you, though. Alec Pierce, he's never been the focal point of an NFL offense before. On top of that, I mean, I like the fact that Daniel Jones, that they want to commit to him. You know, I love Daniel Jones anyway. But if you look at how Pierce performed last year, Pierce was a lot more consistent when Jones was in the lineup. After Jones left and he was jumping back and forth between Riley Leonard and Phillip Rivers, he was a lot more boom or bust, like literally to the point of like 2 points, 20 points, 0 points, 22 points. His 2 best games of the year came after Daniel Jones left. He had two touchdown games, but he also had a couple of games that he literally disappeared in. A lot more boom or bust. He was very much more consistent when it was Daniel Jones there. Now, it's still Jim Bob Cooter's offense and Shane Steichen's offense, and they're still calling the plays. But I agree with you. I think that it means that Alec Pierce is going to have to run something more than just, fades, goes, and posts. He's going to have to start running some of the other stuff if they're going to pay him like a number 1 receiver and treat him like a number 1 wide receiver. I agree. I think he's going to be overvalued there because people will say, "Oh, he's the number one guy on an offense." I'd rather have the number 1 guy than a number 2 guy. I'd rather have the number 2 guy on a couple of different offenses than I would the number 1 guy on an offense with questions at the quarterback position, even if Jones does play. Remember, it's an Achilles tear. It's an Achilles tear on his right foot. That's the foot that's going to take all the stress as he's backpedals and plants to then throw. That's going to affect Daniel Jones's mobility, and Daniel Jones, part of his charm as a quarterback, real life and as a fantasy quarterback, is his legs and his running ability. And if he's not able to do that as much, which we know he won't be able to, at least right out the gate, does that limit his ability to actually throw the ball downfield? He had a really good year last year. He threw the ball farther downfield than he ever has before in terms of, on average, had the highest completion percentage of his career. And I just told you that Alec Pierce was much more consistent with Daniel Jones, but with questions at that position, with no third wide receiver there, with Alec Pierce never having been the guy, except for maybe, certain drives of certain games in the NFL, Yeah, I'm not going to run ahead of myself to draft Alec Pierce in anything this year.
If he comes in for great value, awesome. Dynasty, I love it a little bit more because
Yes.
it's showing, for future purposes, a role that could be expanding. For redraft, I don't know exactly how it's going to go. We'll have to see. All right, so let's get to the actual signings. And the first one actually happened today. This wasn't even on the outline until, a few minutes ago. Kyler Murray signs a 1-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings. Remember, he's ultimately getting paid by the Arizona Cardinals. So this is basically like the Russell Wilson situation when he, after he left Denver, he signed like a 1-year veteran minimum deal. And that's pretty much what you're getting with Kyler Murray here. We could talk for days and days and days about the total fantasy impact of this. So I don't want to get into that because we have a lot of other names that we want to get to. But what I do want to focus on is just Kyler Murray's fantasy fit here. As much as I hate Kyler when it comes especially to the red zone passing, which has been awful throughout his career, the fact that I think he gets overhyped as a rushing quarterback, he's a rushing quarterback, but he's not like, he doesn't pick up the chunk yards, the touchdowns. He's quick, not necessarily long speed fast. And I think the two get conflated because a lot of times he gets put on the same pedestal as Lamar Jackson. That's just simply not the case. But neither here nor there. The one thing I will give Kyler, he has not had in his career, is a legitimate coaching staff because he was traded out there in Arizona. He does have that with Kevin O'Connell. And you have Justin Jefferson. And you have TJ Hawkinson. And they just brought back Aaron Jones and have Jordan Mason. And I know he's been in trade rumors lately, but as of now, they still have Jordan Addison. That's a lot of weapons with a coach you've never had before. I'm just going to put this out there. I have seen it now time and time again. Quarterbacks who do have some talent, I don't take that from Kyler, do have some talent, who wind up in better situations than they have ever been from teammate skill point standpoint and coaching staff play calling, and watch it gone off. Now, here's what's interesting to me, and Chase, this is where I want to get your opinion on it. Kyler Murray's not like any quarterback that Kevin O'Connell's really had. I mean, you can go back to the RG3 days, but Kevin O'Connell wasn't calling the plays then. He has succeeded so far with pocket passing quarterbacks who throw the ball on time. That's not Kyler's game. But the situation of Kyler Murray, definitely better than J.J. McCarthy as far as running the football, and Kevin O'Connell, it's where I get a little bit interested, where I feel like we have the potential for a great fit, and Kyler getting back into the top 10 of fantasy, of which he was only 20th last year in fantasy points per game. And the mix of how does Kevin O'Connell adjust his game plan? Because he will have to do it to some degree if Kyler's going to be week 1. What do you think?
He's going to have to adjust it, but because like you said, he wants guys that are going to be, in the script, on schedule, throw the ball, timing, make your reads. Kyler thrives on chaos, which is when his running ability and his quickness actually, benefit him getting outside and like when he had DeAndre Hopkins, just run outside and, oh, F it, he's down there somewhere and chuck it kind of thing. If he can play that same style of game, saying, F it, Justin Jefferson is down there somewhere and chucking it, plus having TJ Hawkinson, plus having Jordan Addison, it could be really fun. And if he learns anything, and I know that it's dubious, and we've all joked around about Kyler's learning, his propensity not to study, not to be in the playbook. He'd rather be playing Call of Duty. But if Kevin O'Connell can teach him anything more about being an actual passer of the football, combining actual quarterback knowledge with the best of Kyler's physical traits, could be really fun to watch from fantasy standpoint. He's averaged in his career, almost 19 and a half fantasy points a game. JJ McCarthy had 3 games where he touched that level last year out of all of them. And I mean, it was all he could do to get there. Now I will say that JJ McCarthy actually is a little bit more mobile than I think I gave him credit for. They did win some games down the stretch with him at quarterback, but they did not win any games last year because of JJ McCarthy. And I don't think that they're going forward. Now, both of these guys are still young enough that, yeah, I mean, whoever emerges from this battle, and I think it will be a training camp battle, whoever emerges from this battle with the starting job could find themselves, with that mantle of the future guy in Minnesota. You and I were talking before the show about it. I'm a little dubious as to whether Kyler sticks around, but I think he could prove himself again a starting NFL quarterback. And if he's a starter, I just told you, he averages 19 fantasy points a game. He's a fantasy starter when he is a healthy starter. So interested to watch this year in Minnesota. I mean, I'm, as a Packer fan, I hope it flames out, but don't tell my Viking fan 6-year-old son that. So
this is the most upset I think Kyler's had since his second year. And that's what I think. That's ultimately what I think it boils down to. And we'll see what it means from a dynasty standpoint. But if I'm a dynasty player right now, I'm taking that shot on Kyler Murray.
I would be willing to go out and buy him right now.
Because to your point, like, you know how long does he stick around? We talked about this a little bit before the show. If they go out there and win 10 games and get back into the playoffs, I think it's going to be a real hard sell to then turn the thing back over to JJ after you already had that experiment for a year and didn't go well. It'd be a real hard sell. So there's a real chance that Kyler Murray gets to stick around.
If he plays well this year, the worst case scenario, I mean, he either sticks around in Minnesota or he goes somewhere else and is a starter
as the dude. Yeah, no,
yeah. If he plays well, and if he's the starter, we all know my thoughts on JJ McCarthy, and I was not a fan of him before. I'm even less of a fan of him now after this season. So I think this is Kyler's job to lose, to be honest with you.
It should be, especially for week one. All right. So Malik Willis. Oh boy. We are projecting a hell of a lot in the NFL for Malik Willis. Like 45? 45? Really? Well, it had to be we, because I don't know who the Dolphins were bidding against if there wasn't a we.
Right.
So that's because he got quite a bit of money for a guy that you're pretty much projecting off of a 3-game starting sample size. Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
All the projection that you're doing on Malik Willis is all what he did for Green Bay. And with Green Bay, he had 3 starts over the last 2 years. He had 35 pass attempts last season. And in his 3 starts for 2024 and 2025, didn't have more than 21 attempts in any of those games, meaning it was all the running game and then Malik Willis a little sprinkle. Now, give credit where credit's due. Malik Willis definitely showed that he has improved since his Tennessee days. That's not what this is about. This is about projecting on a hell of a scale for this guy to suddenly become your starting quarterback. You're the Packers fan. What do you think here?
Malik Willis showed with Green Bay that he is, in fact, an NFL caliber quarterback. That question was very much up in the air based on what he did in Tennessee. But we're talking about a guy, like you said, 3 career starts. He has 6 career touchdown passes through 4 seasons, all of them with Green Bay. And he has 3 interceptions in that same time frame. All of those came in his first year with Tennessee. I think he learned from Matt LaFleur, and I think he learned a lot. And you guys kind of laughed at me a little bit when you asked me the question about what I thought about Malik Willis getting a starting job earlier this offseason. And you said, well, it sounds like a guy doesn't want to lose his backup quarterback. Well, no, I don't want to lose my backup quarterback. It sucks because now I don't know what we're going to do behind Jordan Love. But I do worry about Malik Willis's, performance now that he's not in that Matt LaFleur system and environment anymore. He's going to Miami and Bobby Slowick. I mean,
it's not drastically. I was going to say it's not drastically different from the systems.
It may not be drastically different, but do they have anybody there that can work with him and can actually? I mean, keep in mind this is a team that wanted Nathaniel Hackett as their quarterbacks coach, and when he said yes and then pulled out and went elsewhere, then they had to go to like their number 2, 3, who knows, 7th option, whatever it was. I do worry about Malik Willis outside of Green Bay and how effective he can be and if he can turn himself into a starter. He's just not the kind of guy that you want to put a ton of faith in from a fantasy standpoint. If you can get him on the cheap in Dynasty, again, do it because quarterbacks are gold typically in Dynasty. He can run. He is athletic. He did have 3 rushing touchdowns with Green Bay as well here in the limited action that he saw. I mean, he showed again, proved me that he is a legitimate NFL quarterback. Is he a starter? Is he the kind of guy you want as the starter for your football team? That I don't know. Being that he is athletic, though, it could turn into a nice windfall in fantasy. So if you can get him for the right price in Dynasty, yes. I'm not prioritizing him in redraft, but I'll tell you what, in best ball, as my second quarterback, if I can get Malik Willis, I think that could be a fun gamble for quite a few months here.
I think you'll be able to get him as your third quarterback in best ball.
Yeah. But I'm saying, you get him that cheap. I think he could turn out to be a very good second quarterback.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine as a third quarterback there. I'm going to keep stressing the third quarterback. You know what I want to see? Bring back the pistol formation.
Yeah.
Bring that back. Then maybe I'll get a little bit more excited. I mean, this system is going to be built around the run game. It's going to be built around play action. It's going to be built around quick passing. Sure, 100% for all those things. But at the end of the day, he's going to be asked to be more exposed than what he was in the starts in Green Bay. And we have not, the last time we saw him be more exposed, it was not a good thing. And while he's cleaned up definitely some fundamentals and some things that happened to him from when he was in the Tennessee Titans, still have a lot of questions about the projection that we're making here based off of 3 starts.
He's a much better runner than Tua Tagovailoa is.
Oh, of course.
If he shows he can read the RPO with guys in the backfield like Etienne and Jalen Wright.
No, agreed.
It could be fun. It could be Katie bar the door. This might be a team that has to score, 4.5 touchdowns every week because they're giving up 3.5 touchdowns every 4.5 touchdowns every week. But
let's be real clear here. The Dolphins getting Malik Willis is not going to make them a playoff team. This is going to be lucky if they win 4 games. So I don't know how much they carry either way.
But if he shows he can play the RPO, if he shows that he can pass the ball, and if he's getting a bunch of garbage time points, which still count in our game, he could be really fun.
It could be. All right, let's pick this up a little bit. So we got Tua Tagovailoa. he goes to the Falcons, right? He signs a 1-year deal. Now, this is an interesting situation because this isn't like the Kyler situation where Kyler's getting brought in to basically beat out J.J. McCarthy and start for the season. Tua's getting brought. I don't know if Tua's getting brought in for the same reason or not, to be honest with you. Like, I know there's been some questions about Michael Penix. There's the Falcons still seem hopeful about Penix. The big thing is that you don't think he's going to be ready health-wise because of the ACL in the first, let's say, month of September, give or take, somewhere in that area. So Tua signs a 1-year contract with the idea that week 1 he's the guy, but how much past that, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Here's what I did like about the move. He's also a left-handed rhythm, anticipation type of thrower.
Yep.
It is a good mentor for a guy like Michael Penix to have. I still think Michael Penix is supposed to be the franchise guy. So if you have Michael Penix in Dynasty, I would not be panicking right now. In fact, if anything, I might even look to buy because his price tag probably just got a little bit lower. I don't care about Tua from a fantasy standpoint. I don't care about Michael Penix from a fantasy standpoint, especially not in 2026. Okay. But here's what I would say. It doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions about Tua getting the ball to Drake London. I don't have any questions about getting the ball to Kyle Pitts. I don't have any questions about Bijan Robinson and his fit with Kevin Stefanski, like we talked about during the Coaching Changes Impact show. So I don't think we had to go too heavily into this other than I think it just keeps everything status quo even when Michael Penix isn't playing. Agree?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like you said, I'm not excited about either Penix or Tagovailoa from a quarterback standpoint, but I agree with you. Kevin Stefanski being in town now, that Stefanski and Tommy Rees are going to love being able to call tight end plays for a Kyle Pitts type. That they're going to love calling plays for a Drake London. And we've seen Tua be able to carry fantasy relevant receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jaden Waddle. We've seen that before. So if it ends up being Tagovailoa, it's not like it's a crazy downgrade or upgrade. from Michael Penix. So as excited as you are coming off of last season for Drake London, you should still be that same excited level, because I don't think anything changes for the offensive weapons on this team outside of the idea that Bijan Robinson actually doesn't have to deal with Tyler Allgeier anymore. Thank God. Hallelujah.
Yeah, which we'll get into that in just a second. But first, talk about our running back in Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
Goes to the Chiefs. I want to be honest with you. I was a little surprised the Chiefs actually made this move, because the Chiefs getting aggressive at the running back position is not something that typically happens. Usually they fall into running backs. They fell into Jamal Charles. They fell into Kareem Hunt. They don't usually go after and go get these guys. They did with Kenneth Walker. And talk about running backs that we've been hoping would break free from their committees. Whew. I mean, he was going to be broken free anyway, because Zach Charbonnet with the ACL injury, we don't know, being that when he had that injury, how much, if at all, he's even going to play in 2026. But he breaks free from it in a big way with the Chiefs. I mean, he's the closest thing to Jamal Charles the Chiefs have had in that period. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the top 5 running back that Jamal Charles was.
And he doesn't have the speed necessarily, but
not quite, but he is still an explosive runner. He's a physical guy. I think he could take on more of a workload than they would allow Charles to do.
Yes.
Because even last year, look, he had 221 carries, goes over 1,000 yards, 34 targets that he turned in 282 yards, and 5 touchdowns. The 5 touchdowns is what I want to harp on, because Zach Charbonnet vultured him at every opportunity. Now, I know technically speaking right now, Kareem Hunt's on the roster for the Chiefs. I have to believe, though, after they give Kenneth Walker the 2-year, $14 million contract, that they're going to treat him a little bit more of a bell cow than Seattle did. And he's going to get a little bit more of an opportunity inside the red zone as a result. So I expect that 5 touchdown mark to go up, and I still expect him to get over 1,000 yards rushing. I think the other question is, will they allow him to get a little bit more involved in the passing game? Now, I don't know if that part will be true, because Brashard Smith, I think there is something to be said that Brashard Smith had a 33 target season and looked pretty solid throughout the year in that role. But Kenneth Walker is going to get his in an offense that is primed to explode. I don't know what's happening with Rashee Rice off the field. As of right now, he's not suspended, so I'm going to act as though until that happens, he's playing week 1. Then you have Xavier Worthy. You're bringing back Travis Kelce for another year. That was already announced. This is an offense that could explode. Now, we don't know. Patrick Mahomes' health is going to be a big question. But for Kenneth Walker in a vacuum for himself, I'm projecting him for between 230 and 260 carries. We haven't seen him get that kind of a workload. So if he gets that with his efficiency and what this offense could be if healthy, it's pretty exciting. What do you got, Chase?
Kenneth Walker last season averaged, during the regular season, 13 carries a game. For his career, he has averaged 14 carries a game. And he's been dealing for the majority of that with Zach Charbonnet there. We all sang a hallelujah chorus, not because Zach Charbonnet got hurt, but because Kenneth Walker was finally going to be unleashed. And lo and behold, what does he do in the playoffs? He averages 22 carries per game, 104 yards, and over a touchdown per game. 4 touchdowns in 3 playoff games. He also, by the way, caught 9 passes on 11 targets for another 100 yards in those 3 games as well. He can do everything you want him to do and need him to do as a lead back. Now, Eric Bieniemy coming back. It's going to be Andy Reid's offense and Eric Bieniemy calling it. We know that that's a coaching staff and a team that is willing to use a runner and a passing running back. And so, like you said, Brashard Smith is still there. I still like Brashard Smith. I think Brashard Smith is fantasy relevant this year. But I definitely think that Walker's carries go up from what his career average has been. I think he's stepping into a better offensive line than what he ran behind for the majority of his career in Seattle. And I love Kenneth Walker coming into this next year. He has been, despite what we all know and love about him or think we know about him, he has been a running back 2, low-end running back 2 in his career from a fantasy standpoint in terms of his points per game. He only averages about 12.2 points per game in his fantasy career, half PPR points per game, which puts him in mid to low running back 2 level. If he can expand his carries, I know that it's not going to be the same people calling plays that called the plays during those 3 playoff games last year. But if he finds himself somewhere between the 14 carries a game that he's averaging in his career and that 22 that he averaged in the playoffs, you're getting a heck of a running back on a team that is going to be doing everything they can to get back on top of the mountain after the relative failure in terms of Kansas City Chiefs football that last year was.
No, agreed. And it's Andy Reid calling the plays. And say what you want about Eric Bieniemy, but when he is the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, their running backs tend to do pretty well. Their running backs tend to do pretty well.
Not Kenneth Gainwell, Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was a fantasy running back, startable running back, not just a guy that was relevant. He was a top 24 running back under Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid.
No, agreed. Another guy who signed a big contract to move places was Travis Etienne. I can't believe this. I mean, this guy got like 12 plus million a year. Yeah. That shocked me. Because look, Travis Etienne was good last year. 260 carries, 1,100 rushing yards, 47 targets. He turned into 292 receiving yards, and he had 13 total touchdowns. That being the big key. The 13 total touchdowns, I'm here to tell you, was an outlier. And he's not going to score 13 touchdowns with that Saints offense. So let's make that real clear right now. From a fantasy standpoint, Travis Etienne, even if he had stayed on Jacksonville, was going to be taking a step down from a fantasy impact from what he had. Plus, let's not forget, we're talking about a guy who's getting drafted in like the 10th round in fantasy football drafts and redraft leagues and came through the way that he did. So you're not going to get the bang for your buck. He is going to have some regression. He's going to a worse offense. What the contract does do is that it guarantees that he's the dude. I don't know what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara, but I can say that one way or another, they're going to try to find a way to move on. It guarantees that Travis Etienne is the dude that they're going to use. Because otherwise, you can't justify the money that you're going to pay him on a year in, year out basis. And look, it's a running back. It's a 4-year deal. That means the first 2 years, he's pretty much locked in. That's basically what that means. So I thought that was interesting. What do you make of it? When you look at Travis Etienne, I mean, volume alone, does it make him a RB2 or with the Saints offense being questionable? I know people are excited about Chuck, but I think people need to calm down about that. Like, are we talking about more of an RB3 who's going to get drafted like an RB2? I don't know. What's your take?
Well, I do expect Alvin Kamara to be gone, to be honest with you. I don't expect Alvin Kamara to be on this team for the season. So I do expect Travis Etienne to be the unquestioned number one in this backfield. Honestly, if I'm the Saints, and I'm not, but I think that they might follow this same line of thinking, Kendre Miller would be gone if I were the Saints as well. You've seen enough of him for long enough. We've all waited on him. We all sat on him in Dynasty long enough. We hoped he would break out. It ain't happening, folks. It's just not going to happen. Devin Neal, on the other hand, is still there. And Devin Neal was getting volume last year before he got hurt and had to sit out the rest of the year. I could see this being sort of what they did last year with Etienne in Jacksonville in terms of having, Etienne handle a big workload, but also giving Devin Neal in the Bashal Tutin role. I think that's your top two. I think that based on volume alone, I'm still willing to draft Etienne as a running back 2 type. I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Travis Etienne. I did not have one for him before this past season, but he was my running back 2 on my finally home league championship winning team. So Travis Etienne is a forever a star in my heart. But looking at it objectively, yeah, he's not getting 13 touchdowns again. But based on volume alone, his performance, what I think is going to happen there. Remember, Taysom Hill, all of that red zone ridiculousness that might be done this year as well.
True.
I'm willing to take a gamble on Travis Etienne as my number 2 running back, especially if I get that hero or zero running back type guy. I'm willing to wait and take a Travis Etienne for a running back 2.
No, and that's probably fair because honestly, again, I go back to the contract they paid him. They paid him like he's going to be the dude.
Yes.
And as a projection, assuming again, Alvin Kamara's off the team, which I assume would be the case. I mean, I safely range-wise, 230 to 260 carries, 40 to 50 targets. Yep. Even if he's not the most efficient, which he wasn't at times last season, that's enough volume that will put you in the RB2 category, as long as you're a competent back, which he is. So, yep, that's what we're looking at for Travis Etienne. Just thought it was an interesting move for a Saints team that doesn't have a lot of salary cap and is rebuilding to spend that much on a veteran running back. Just thought from that standpoint, it was a little bit interesting.
More salary cap than they've had in the past, though. This is the first year they weren't like absolutely underwater, but yeah.
True. Absolutely true. I'm going to save the conversation about Jacksonville side with Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez signing there. Very interesting conversation I think you guys can have next week.
Temper your expectations. Yep.
Let's go to Tyler Allgeier. He moves on. So David Montgomery moved on. Now Tyler Allgeier moved on. The biggest hindrances to the running backs we love the most in fantasy football purposes in the red zone. And I want to jump to the Bijan side of this right off the rip, frankly, because unlike Jahmyr Gibbs, who already had 18 touchdowns, even with David Montgomery on the team, Bijan, the only thing he was lacking was touchdown. And I can't even say he was lacking. He got 11 touchdowns last year. But when you compare it to, he had over 2,200 scrimmage yards, and he had nearly 300 carries, and he had 100 targets. The only thing that was missing from his profile was like a plus 15 touchdown performance. Well, now you take Tyler Allgeier out of the mix. The Falcons will probably add somebody, but who cares?
Yep.
Bijan's going to get the red zone mix, especially under Kevin Stefanski.
Yes.
So this is why I go back to, I love Jahmyr Gibbs, but I can't quite put him over Bijan Robinson. I don't know. Give me your take on how excited you are, but then also dive into the Tyler Allgeier aspect of this, of him going to the Cardinals.
Again, Bijan has a soft spot in my heart because he was my running back one on my fantasy championship winning team last year. But yeah, we have wanted him to be out from under the yoke of Tyler Allgeier, who is a good running back in his own right. Remember, Tyler Allgeier, his rookie season was 1,000-yard running back him on his own merits by himself. Tyler Allgeier is not a bad running back necessarily when he gets the volume. But Bijan being able to be out from that shadow, they have to make another move at running back. They have to bring somebody in. There's just nobody literally on that depth chart. Nathan Carter and Carlos Washington Jr. Quick, anybody tell me who those two dudes are. No, you can't. Nobody can. I doubt that Kevin Stefanski can tell you who those dudes are if they were sitting next to him and kicked him in the shin right now. So I love Bijan for next year. Yes, I have him. I will have him ranked very, very high. But we have seen Kevin Stefanski offenses in the past be very, very good for running backs. And I love the idea of Bijan next year. Tyler Allgeier, moving on to the desert in Arizona. Tyler Allgeier has been the reason we can't have nice things at the running back position on the teams that he's been on. And it's still going to be frustrating because now this team not only brought in Tyler Allgeier, but they renegotiated in an effort to keep James Conner, who has been a running back, low-end running back one, high-end running back two on his own right. Plus, they still have Trey Benson, and granted, Conner and Benson are both coming off injuries. Boom. On top of that, they re-signed Bam Zonovan Knight. This is a crowded-ass running back room in the desert, and your guess is as good as mine. Who is going to emerge from this melee on top of the pile? It sucks.
Of all the same running back. Let's make that point.
Right? Yeah. It's the same dude.
It's not even that you have a crowded backfield. It's the fact that they're all the same dude. Like Tyler Allgeier, James Conner, Trey Benson. These are all ground and pound between the tackle red zone guys.
This is not David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Woody Marks.
It's all the same dude. Yeah. Like Trey Benson, Dynasty, bye-bye, is gone. Because look, even if he breaks free from this mess at some point,
he ain't getting a goal line carries.
He's not getting the touches. He's in year 3. If you're a running back in year 3 and you haven't broken out yet, look, it doesn't look good for you as far as historical comps for you having the opportunity to become a fantasy football asset at any point in time.
This could be a legitimate 3-headed Targaryen dragon here, where Benson is the guy between the 20s on first and second down, and where Allgeier is the red zone or goal line short yardage guy, and James Conner ends up taking the passing down work, and Zonovan Knight comes in every once in a while to bam, vulture somebody off of something.
Listen, here would be my guess. My guess would be that because they reworked the contract with James Conner, what he means to that organization, that he probably week 1 at the very least is the leader of the backfield. But to your point, like this could be a series by series. Like, who knows? No one is a clear-cut pass-catching running back out of this group. No, so, because they're all the same dude, I have no idea other than this might just be a full-fledged rotation that a backfield you flat out just don't want to touch. Period. It's not an offense that's going to score a lot of points here, people. We're talking about Mike LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett with Jacoby Brissett leading the way. I know Jacoby Brissett was fun last season. Things like that usually happen in a vacuum, and they don't usually spread out over time. Let's get real.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know, too, about Hackett.
Enough said on him for that one. All right, so let's dive into the wide receivers. Mike Evans goes to San Francisco. I want to get your take on this before I go into it.
See, and I'm excited to hear your take because you're the 49er dude. He's obviously the new X, the new wide receiver 1. He's the top dog in terms of that receiving core when he's healthy and on the field. And I see another move that has to happen, I think, from a wide receiver standpoint, because you're talking about him on one side, you're talking about Pearsall on the other side. We've got Kittle coming off injury here. Juwan Jennings is out of town. Ayuk is out of town. Demarcus Robinson is ancient.
He's there.
He's there. Yeah, he's around. He's in the room, right? And he can help you study. You can, cheat off his notes maybe. Mike Evans is the alpha dog there, is going to be, at least for sure, that I would think the first half of the season or so until maybe Kittle gets up and running. Obviously, you've got Christian McCaffrey, who is the offense when and if he's on the field as well. I don't mind the move for San Francisco because they needed somebody. They've been kind of making do with a lot of wide receiver 2 types on their team. Evans is the only guy that they've had it lately. I think that is the kind of guy that can be that, alpha guy. Now he's on the tail end of his career. Okay. But the kind of volume that we saw him getting in Tampa Bay, if you look at let's just look at the play calling last year. San Francisco literally attempted only about 1 pass more per game than Tampa Bay did. And Mike Evans in Tampa Bay's offense, when he was healthy, again, he got hurt last year, but when Michael Evans is healthy in that offense, in that Tampa Bay offense, he was a fantasy, he was a fantasy star. He's a good receiver. He's going to be able to see and get and garner that same kind of volume in San Francisco overall. Where I worry maybe about Mike Evans is that red zone usage, because they have such a great red zone weapon in McCaffrey, because if and when Kittle's healthy, he can be such a fun weapon down there. But I think I was looking at Mike Evans, had he gone back to Tampa Bay with his age, with his health questions, I was looking at him as a wide receiver 2 anyway. I still look at him as a wide receiver 2 in San Francisco here if he can stay healthy this year. But I liked the move for the 49ers, to be honest with you. I want to hear your take as a 49er guy who's in the weeds on this.
So from a fantasy perspective, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that you're still going to look at Mike Evans, the wide receiver 2 on Tampa Bay.
Sorry.
Because I think it was too crowded of a room with Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin, who I think Chris Godwin, that's the big key. People are sleeping on Chris Godwin. He's going to be a lot better this year, coming a year separated from those injuries that he's been having.
Baker loved him some Mike Evans, though.
He did.
Baker and Mike Evans were best buddies for a while.
From a red zone perspective, and that's where I get into the Mike Evans of it all with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
This is a copycat, if I've ever seen one, of the Rams signing Devontae Adams last year. It's exactly the same thing. Now, Devontae Adams wound up finishing as a top 12 wide receiver. Why? Because of the red zone. Like, Devontae Adams clearly lost a step. He's not the same guy. He's not dominating for 1,500 yards or anything like that anymore. But he was a guy who would come in, He could be a situational chain mover in key situations that Matthew Stafford needed him to be, because he could still get separation. He could still be that dude in those types of moments. And he's excellent in the red zone. It's exactly what Mike Evans is going to be for this team. Now, we still have the hamstring injuries, and this is what concerns me a little bit from a couple different standpoints. One, I was lower on Mike Evans heading into last year from a fantasy standpoint, because I had kept saying the hamstring injuries that he somehow would play through or only miss a game and then come back again, we're going to eventually catch up with him. And that when they did, it was going to bite him in a big way, and they probably weren't going to go away for the rest of his career. I still believe that. I still believe this is a big injury risk. And he's going to a team that doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to keeping their own players healthy. So that's the concerning part. However, it's critical the situation he falls into. We don't know if George Kittle can be ready week 1. And outside of George Kittle, this team has been lacking a red zone target. In fact, red zone was a big problem for them last year because the offensive line declined a little bit. Christian McCaffrey wasn't able to punch it in, and they kind of found themselves looking for answers outside of George Kittle in the red zone. So I do think Mike Evans walks into an opportunity where he could get double-digit touchdowns, and that's going to be the case. He's definitely going to be at least a wide receiver too, because I do think he goes into this as them thinking he is the lead target of this team. Here's what is important for Mike Evans heading into next year, coming off these injuries, because those will say, okay, he's turning 33 years old. Is it more than just the injury? Has he already lost a step? 1.75 yards per route run. It's about average. 6.2 yards per target. Average. His separation was still top 3 before he got injured. So that tells me we're okay as far as his ability goes. Hamstring injuries, they're not Achilles, they're not ACLs. I don't think they're going to make him suddenly not be able to separate a year removed. And Mike Evans fits the Shanahan system so well. I mean, every time Shanahan has actually had a big alpha type wide receiver, Julio Jones, think of all those guys. They've always performed well. Now, Mike Evans is not going to be Julio Jones, but I keep harping back to a guy who's already touchdown great in this system that will set him up. I think it's very easy to see him getting double-digit touchdowns again. And I would go on a limb and say if he gives you 13, 14 games, it's likely he gives you another 1,000-yard receiver too.
Oh, big time. Oh, yeah, no. If he gives you 14, 15 games, yeah. That's his average. He averages about 74 yards a game in his career, which means if he plays 14, 15 games, yeah, he gets that 1,000 automatically. Mike Evans never made his living by being some kind of blazing fast, like run past you kind of guy. I'm not worried about Mike Evans losing a step as he ages. I'm only worried about the idea of soft tissue injuries as he goes forward, because Mike Evans is still 6'5". Mike Evans is still 231 pounds. Mike Evans is still Mike Evans with his hands. And I think he can still bring his type of game to the field there as long as he's healthy. And I think he's one of those dudes that can play and will play as long as he can keep his health. I'm excited for it. I'm not going to be reaching for him. I'm not going to be prioritizing him in drafts necessarily, but I think that you are not going to be disappointed with Mike Evans this year when he's healthy. And that's a big win, and that's a big if. But I like Mike Evans in San Francisco.
I agree. So I have him projected somewhere between 90 and 105 targets, which is about on par for what an alpha wide receiver has been in San Francisco. That gives him a wide receiver 3 baseline with touchdown spikes to bump him into the wide receiver 2 category. If he gets 14 like Devontae Adams, we may be talking about him finishing as a top 12 wide receiver. So wide variety. Point is, I think Mike Evans will be in your lineup more than not heading into next year with this fit. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to the tight end that we have to talk about, and Isaiah Likely. He goes to the Giants. This is the one we were all watching, right? Like, okay, Likely going to get the opportunity. He's going to split free from Mark Andrews. He's going to get the chance to be on his own. And what does he do? He follows his old head coach and winds up right in a situation where, look, Theo Johnson is not Mark Andrews in his prime, but this is still a quality tight end who plays a 3-down roll skill set, which tells me on a team that has John Harbaugh, Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, and Greg Roman in some, consultant area, whatever he's doing, he's going to play the same role. Now, the difference may be Theo Johnson maybe does not command the same amount of targets, especially in the red zone, as Mark Andrews. Maybe that's the difference. But ultimately, this was not the boost that I think we were looking for. At least I was not looking for Isaiah Likely. I don't know. Where do you follow this?
We know that Nagy likes to be able to create mismatches with that tight end. He's loved it in his past. He likes to be able to create mismatches with his tight end. And we all, at least in the fantasy community, have always felt like Isaiah Likely was the kind of guy who should be able to give you a mismatch at that tight end position whenever he plays. But he just followed the same head coach that has kind of refused to use him in his career. First off, that's a frustrating thing. Secondly, you just said he went to a team that already had a tight end who has built some rapport with their young quarterback, who I think proved himself last year. That was one of the questions on Theo Johnson coming out of the draft, or going into the draft and coming out of it and going into last season. Could Theo Johnson be a blocking tight end as well? Everybody knew he was going to be 6'6", 6'7", and 250. Could he block, and would he block? And I think he proved himself last year. He has a 3-down skill set. Isaiah Likely is much more a receiver-only move type tight end. What I worry about happening here is kind of the same thing that I worried about in the past few years with the Buffalo Bills between Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And I don't know that it necessarily played out this way, but I worry that Isaiah Likely is going to be Matt Nagy's guy between the 20s, and Theo Johnson is going to be the guy inside the 20. And so that's going to cap and limit Isaiah Likely's fantasy usability. I don't necessarily know that you get a lot more scoring out of Isaiah Likely than you ever have in your past. He's averaged about 5 fantasy points, half PPR fantasy points in his career. I don't know that you see a ton more than that. It might be a step up, but even if you step up from 5, where are you going from 5 that you want that over any of the other 15 viable fantasy candidates at tight end, including Theo Johnson himself? So I worry that this kind of just muddies the waters for actually both of those guys, to be honest with you.
No. I mean, look, Theo Johnson's no slouch, man. He had 72 targets, 528 yards, and 5 touchdowns last year.
He was the New York Giants' leading red zone receiver. Guess what? Isaiah Likely isn't necessarily a red zone guy.
Now, here's what I would say. 2 things. 1, the Giants just let Wan'Dale Robinson walk, which maybe we'll talk about next week. So that just leaves Malik Neighbors as of now. Maybe they address that situation, or maybe they have to get down and dirty into the trenches. Who knows? They could go a bunch of different ways with their draft picks there. Now they have a new coaching regime. And then outside of that, Jackson Dart loved the tight end position last year. Like, Theo Johnson did well, but Daniel Bellinger was like no slouch, quote unquote, as far as his
as a blocking tight end. He wasn't.
Yeah, he was actually involved still in the passing game because Jackson Dart just loves to target the middle of the field that much. And Matt Nagy's not going to dissuade him from that. Nagy made a living off of Trubisky targeting the short area, middle of the field. So this is going to be an offense that I think will be more than happy to be 12 personnel, maybe a league leading amount. But ultimately, what does that mean? It means Isaiah Likely's been what he's been. Like, maybe he's consistent enough to be considered a top 12 tight end, but not in the top 7. How's it different from the best fantasy year that he's had to begin with?
Right.
So it was a situation where I was kind of disappointed to see him. I get following the coach. You have the repertoire, but from a fantasy standpoint, I was disappointed to see you not take a chance and go somewhere where he could have been a real weapon. because there's a lot of coaching schemes out there now that are using move tight ends like likely as featured weapons. And now we won't get to see that. So it's a little disappointing from that standpoint. And it hurts Theo Johnson's value to some degree too. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just, the New York Giants, I mean, geez, is there any way they don't finish in the bottom half of the league in terms of yards per play next year between all the guys that they have playing and Cam Scatterbo at running back? And it remains to be seen what they do opposite Malik Neighbors in the wide receiver core.
I was going to say
maybe under this new regime, they get away from every single guy in the receiver room being a slot receiver.
Yeah, that's the big key point right there. Like Malik Neighbors' health and the idea that them being bigger, especially in that division, may not be the worst thing in the world for them. Now, they're not going to win a division. I still put the Eagles and the Cowboys ahead of them from a talent standpoint. But I do think they compete with the Commanders. And I do think they're going to be more competitive with teams like the Eagles and the Cowboys because they are going to have more of a physical mindset and get competitive. So I don't think it's going to be awful. Like, let's think about some of the teams that are going to be awful real quick just before we close out the show. Like the Dolphins are going to be bad. The Cardinals are going to be really bad. The Jets are going to be god awful. Like the Giants are not quite down there in that dump.
No, they're not that bad.
Yeah,
they're not that bad. You're right.
Oh, I do think there will be some value there from that standpoint. But we're going to wrap up the show there because we don't go too long. Make sure you guys download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app. Make sure you check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel. I also drop shorts on the Dan Mater YouTube channel for this show. So make sure you go ahead and check that out at Dan Mater FF. And on X, I am now DMater91935. Someone find that hacker for me. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.